The Killpen auction was the last place Eric Ferguson wanted to be on a cold October morning. The air was sharp enough to sting his lungs, and the smell of fear drifted over the crowded pens where thin, trembling horses waited with dull eyes. Eric had driven 3 long hours from his ranch in Wyoming to the Nebraska border, and he already wished he had stayed home. Wyatt Cole, his ranch hand and closest friend, walked beside him with slow steps. Wyatt was a lean man with weathered skin and kind eyes that had seen more broken animals than any man should. He looked at Eric and asked, "Are you sure about this?" "No," Eric said, pulling his jacket tighter. "But Ruby wants me to try. You know how she is." Ruby was his 17-year-old daughter. For months she had begged him to rescue a horse from a kill pen. She had shown him videos, shared stories, pleaded every day until he agreed to come here. Just to look. But Eric already knew he would not be able to walk out of this place empty-handed. They moved closer to the auction ring. Horse after horse was led inside, bones showing, coats dull, heads hanging. Buyers shouted prices in flat voices. These were not horsemen looking for ranch partners or riding horses. These were kill buyers, men who bought horses by the pound for slaughter. Then the auctioneer called. Lot 51. A bay gelding stepped into the ring, and the sight of him made Eric stop breathing for a moment. The horse was painfully thin, with ribs showing through a coat coated in dried mud. His mane was tangled, his tail filled with burrs. But even in this state, something about him stood out. His neck had a proud arch, his face had a refined shape. Under the fear and dirt was the shape of a strong, well-made horse. 50. Called a kill buyer. Eric watched the gelding shift in the ring. The horse's eyes scanned the crowd as if searching for someone who had not come. It struck something deep inside Eric. 75. Another buyer called. 100. Came from the front. The horse flinched at the voices, and Eric had a strange feeling in his chest. A pull he could not explain. This horse was different. Someone had once loved him. 150, Eric heard himself say. Wyatt turned to him with raised brows. "Boss!" 175. The buyer shot back angrily. Eric tightened his jaw. He had $500 in his pocket. It was meant for a new hay baler, not this. But Ruby would never forgive him if he walked away, and something deep in his gut told him this gelding mattered more than he understood. 200, Eric said firmly. The kill buyer glared at him, studying him. Eric stood his ground. After a tense moment, the buyer backed down, sold for $200. Wyatt clapped Eric on the shoulder. Ruby is going to flip when she sees him. Maybe, Eric said, still staring at the gelding. Let's get him before I regret this. An hour later, the gelding stepped slowly into their trailer. He moved carefully, favoring his right front leg. Easy, buddy, Eric murmured. You're safe now. The horse lifted his head and looked at him with soft, intelligent eyes. Eric felt that strange pull again. There was more to this horse than anyone at the auction realized. The drive home was quiet. Eric kept checking the mirror to be sure the gelding was steady. When they reached the ranch, Ruby came running out. She climbed onto the trailer fender and looked inside. "Dad, you really did it! Oh, he's so skinny!" "We'll fix that," Eric said. "Wyatt, help her unload." They walked the gelding into the biggest stall they had. Ruby had already filled water and hay. She stood watching with tears in her eyes as the horse drank deeply. "What should we name him?" she asked. "Let's make sure he's healthy first," Eric said. "I'll call Dr. Berman in the morning." But Eric's mind was already drifting. Where had this horse come from? Who had owned him? How had a horse with such presence ended up in a kill pen? Dr. Leonard Berman arrived early Monday. He checked the gelding carefully, moving his hands down every leg, listening to his heart, lifting each hoof. "Underweight," he said. "Hooves a mess. Old tendon injury in the front leg. Nothing fresh. He'll recover fine with good care." But when Leonard brushed dirt from the horse's left hip, he froze. "Eric, get over here." A faded brand appeared on the gelding's skin, a stylized D with a quarter moon under it. Leonard frowned. "Do you know what this is?" Eric shook his head. "This is the Dreamcatcher Ranch brand out of Oklahoma. one of the most famous quarter horse breeding operations in the country. Their horses sell for tens of thousands. Sometimes more. Eric stared at the gelding. Are you saying this horse is valuable? I'm saying he should never have been in a kill pen, Leonard said. And something is very wrong here. You need to call Dreamcatcher Ranch. Eric felt the weight of it settle in his chest. He had not just rescued a horse. He had stepped straight into a mystery. And nothing about this horse was what it seemed. Eric sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open, the screen glowing in the dim morning light. Ruby paced behind him, too nervous to sit still. Wyatt leaned against the counter with his arms crossed. They all watched as Eric clicked through the Dreamcatcher Ranch website. The place looked like a palace for horses. Wide pastures, spotless barns, rooms full of trophies. Every horse in the photos looked powerful and well-bred. But one picture stopped Eric cold. There he is, Wyatt said quietly. A bay gelding stood proud in a show pen, coat shining, muscles perfect. The same refined head. The same strong hindquarters. The same spark in the eyes. Dreamcatcher's ace high. 5-year-old gelding. Youth world champion. $85,000. Sold? Ruby gasped. Dad, that's him! That's our horse. Eric felt a heaviness settle deep in his chest. This horse wasn't just valuable, he had once been loved. Trained. Shown by a young rider who trusted him. How did he end up in a kill pen? Eric whispered. There was only one way to find out. He called the number on the website. After a moment, a woman answered. He told her everything. She put him on hold. When the call resumed, a man's voice came on. This is Albert Dennison. I own Dreamcatcher Ranch. Did you say you have Ace? Eric explained where and how he found the gelding. He could hear the man's breath catch at the mention of the kill pen. Ace has been missing for 18 months, Albert said. He was stolen from his owner's barn in Colorado. We've been searching for him ever since. Eric felt the world slow down. Stolen. His owner is a 15-year-old girl named Ivy Baxter. That horse was her partner. Losing him broke her heart. Eric closed his eyes. Someone out there had lived a nightmare for a year and a half. Mr. Ferguson, Albert said, voice shaking, you saved his life. I just bought him, Eric said quietly. Anyone would have. But Eric knew that wasn't true. If he hadn't gone to that auction, the gelding would be dead. Albert gave him the Baxter family's number. And now Eric had to make a call he had no idea how to make. That evening, he sat on the porch, staring at his phone. Words felt twisted inside him. How do you tell people their hope is alive? He finally dialed. A woman answered. He introduced himself. A gasp came through the phone. Then the sound of the phone being handed off. This is David Baxter, a man said. You found Ace? Yes, sir. He's thin, but he's alive. My vet says he will recover. Eric could hear someone sobbing softly behind David's voice. My daughter, David said. She hasn't been the same since he was taken. She hasn't even competed. She couldn't. Every show reminded her of him. Eric swallowed hard. Sir, Ace belongs with your girl. I'll take care of him until he's strong enough, then I'll bring him home. David's breath hitched. Thank you. Whatever the cost, whatever we owe. I'm not selling him for profit, Eric cut in. That's not who I am. There was silence, a grateful silence. But could you send a picture? David asked softly. So Ivy can see he's real? Eric walked down to the barn. Ruby sat outside the stall, talking softly to the gelding. Ace lifted his head when Eric entered. Your girl is waiting for you, buddy, Eric murmured. He took photos and sent them. A minute later, a video call came in. A teenage girl with red eyes and trembling hands appeared on the screen. That's him, she whispered. That's my Ace. Eric nodded. Yes, Ivy. He's safe now. The girl broke down crying, whispering, thank you over and over. For the next 6 weeks, Ivy called every day, sometimes twice. She watched through the screen as Eric fed Ace, groomed him, cared for him. She told stories about their rides, their shows, how Ace would lift his head the moment he saw her truck. Ruby and Ivy became friends too. They would talk for hours, two girls connected by a horse neither was ready to let go of. And Ace changed. Weight returned to his frame. His coat gleamed again. His eyes grew bright and alive. The farrier fixed his hooves. The vet confirmed he was healing well. But one question haunted Eric. How did an $85,000 champion end up in a kill pen? With help from Dreamcatcher Ranch, he contacted the Colorado sheriff who handled the original theft. Officer Angela Torres explained the ugly truth. Ace had been sold at least 4 times over 18 months. Colorado to New Mexico. New Mexico to Texas. Texas to Kansas. Kansas to Nebraska. Each time in worse condition, each buyer less informed, until he became just another abandoned horse. Eric felt sick as he listened. A horse who once won trophies had been passed around like old equipment. But we have a trail now, Angela said, and because of you, we finally have answers. That night, Ruby pushed her food around quietly. Eric reached across the table and took her hand. "Are you all right?" "I'm going to miss him," she whispered. "And I keep thinking about all the horses we couldn't save." Eric squeezed her hand. "We saved him. And sometimes one life is enough to change everything." 6 weeks after the auction, the vet gave his approval. Ace was ready to go home, and now the Baxters were coming. The morning after Christmas was cold and bright when the Baxter family truck rolled into Ferguson Ranch with a horse trailer hitched behind it. Eric, Ruby, and Wyatt stood waiting in the driveway as the truck came to a stop. David Baxter stepped out first, a tall man with tired but grateful eyes. His wife Lauren followed, small and gentle, with worry still clinging to her face. And then Ivy climbed out. 16 now, but still carrying the grief of the last 18 months in her eyes. She stood frozen for a moment, staring toward the barn as if afraid to believe this day was real. "He's inside," Eric said softly. "Ruby, why don't you take her?" Ruby nodded and walked with Ivy toward the barn. Ivy's steps were slow at first, then faster, then almost a run as hope pulled her forward. David stopped Eric and handed him an envelope. Before Eric could react, David said, "This is for Ace's care, and for giving our daughter something we thought was gone forever." Eric opened it and nearly dropped it. A check for $25,000. "I can't take this," Eric said. "It's too much." "It's not even close," Lauren said firmly. "You saved our daughter's heart. Please use it to save more horses. We know that's what you want to do." Before he could respond, a loud, sharp whinny echoed from the barn. Ivy's cry followed, full of emotion too strong to contain. They hurried inside. Ace stood at the stall door with his ears pricked forward. Ivy had her arms wrapped around his neck, her face pressed into his mane as she laughed and cried at the same time. The gelding was nuzzling her hair, making a soft rumbling sound deep in his chest. A sound of recognition. A sound of love. "He remembers me," Ivy whispered. "He remembers everything." Eric felt his eyes sting. Ruby wiped tears off her cheeks. Even Wyatt had to look away. They gave Ivy as much time as she needed. After nearly an hour, they led Ace toward the trailer. Ivy walked beside him, and Ace followed her with perfect trust, just as he had in the show ring. When she paused, he paused. When she turned, he turned. Before loading him, Ivy turned to Ruby. "Thank you for taking care of him. Thank you for being my friend." Ruby hugged her. "Send me pictures." "Lots of them." "Every day," Ivy promised. David shook Eric's hand. "You ever need anything, you call me. You want to keep rescuing horses, I'll help however I can." As the trailer pulled away, Ace's head appeared in the window. He looked back at the barn that had sheltered him, the people who had healed him, and the place where he was saved. Then Ivy's hand reached up to stroke his face, and he turned toward her. He was going home. Wyatt stood beside Eric as the dust settled. "Barn feels empty now," he said. Ruby wiped her eyes. "Dad, can we rescue another one?" Eric looked at her, then at the empty stall where Ace had lived, then at the check still in his hand. "Yeah, sweetheart," he said softly. "I think we can." 6 months later, the Ferguson Ranch rescue barns were full. 15 horses had been saved from kill pens. Some were adopted to good homes. Others were healing slowly. Every stall had a story. The rescue's Facebook page had exploded with followers after Ruby posted Ace's journey. People from all over the country sent donations, supplies, and messages of support. David Baxter kept his promise too, helping fundraise and spreading the word. Ruby spent every free moment in the barn. She told Eric she wanted to be a large animal vet someday. Wyatt now worked full-time for the rescue. And Eric? He realized he had found something he didn't know he was searching for. Purpose. One afternoon, Ruby came running toward Eric with her phone. "Dad, look!" It was Ivy's newest post. A photo of her and Ace in a show ring, both gleaming in the sunshine. They had won their class. The caption said, "This is what second chances look like. Thank you, Ferguson Ranch Rescue." Eric smiled, pride swelling in his chest. His phone rang. It was Albert Dennison. "Eric, I've got a situation," Albert said. "One of my mares was stolen in Utah. She just turned up in a kill pen in Montana. Can you take her?" Eric looked around the rescue barn, at the horses chewing hay, at the empty stalls waiting for new lives. At the nameplate, he kept hanging over one special stall, Ace's stall, a reminder of the horse who started it all. "Yeah, Albert," he said. "We'll go get her." Eric hung up the phone and slipped it into his pocket. Sometimes a second chance comes in the form of a skinny, frightened horse in a kill pen. Sometimes it costs only $200. But what you save is worth far more. And the work was only beginning.